So today I'm going to be basically pitching my idea for my final major project. This is called Less Than a Bed. I chose this name because there is a lack of beds for inpatients within the NHS, especially in psychiatric wards, which is what my film is about. So my concept. I've decided to create a journalistic investigation / observant reflexive documentary. This is going to be based around young adults' experiences in psychiatric wards. The main aim of this is to explore how this experience has shaped them as people, kind of to see how they're doing now, and to break down stigmas surrounding psychiatric ward patients. I'm going to be creating a zine by hand. If you don't know what that is, it's basically like a miniature DIY zine. It usually covers a very niche subject. It was very popular during the Riot Girl days, and kind of like squatting and punks, they all made zines. It was really popular back in the 80s, 90s. And this will include some of my own art / poetry. And film photography as well, actually, and other contributors' work, mainly surrounding mental health issues. But it won't be an obvious link, it will just kind of have that general theme or feeling to it. I also plan to write an article in collaboration with Exposure to explain the backstory behind the film. So the backstory of the film is that when I was 15, I was admitted to a psych ward. I stayed there for a month and I hated it, as you do. And after the experience I had, I always thought, especially when I started doing media, that I wanted to make a film about this, and I wanted to find out other people's opinions. Did it help them? Did it make them worse? Are they better now? You know, did they have the same experience that I did? Which obviously they didn't. But I just wanted to really investigate this kind of issue. And a lot of my contributors are actually people I met in the ward, so I've known them a few years, which is nice. So I'm excited to work with them and actually catch up with them as well and just see how they're doing, because it's really nice to be able to see your friends and people you know flourish, especially when you come from such a horrible place, you know. So, hooks and themes: mental health, reflection, recovery, personal growth, stigma, the NHS, intimate, sensitive subjects matter, so I will have to put a Samaritan's number at the end, of course. A collaborative project, and the high end of low, which is a Marilyn Manson reference, but a lot of people that's how they describe their time in a psych ward, so I thought I'd put that there. Target audience proposed. As this is a social issue, it gives my documentary the opportunity of reaching a much larger audience. So there is a heavy involvement of young adults in this project. My main target audience is a diverse range of 16 to 24-year-olds, mainly ranging from the B to D demographic. That's just a rough estimate though. They should though have an interest in mental health activism, and due to the kind of artistic elements of this project, a creative, curious mindset. Extensive research on my audience is going to be created during my kind of researching period. So the general profile I've done so far is they are social media users due to the age, and everyone has a phone now. So Facebook, Instagram and Snapchat are the biggest ones that everyone uses. Aspirers, reformers are generally the psychographics of my target audience. Aspirers tend to be, 16 to maybe 21, 22, 23, 24, because it's kind of the age where you're still working towards something. And so obviously a lot of my target audience will be in that psychographic. But then on the other hand, I also have reformers, which is kind of the opposite. But I do think a lot of people that have experienced mental health problems themselves do tend to become reformers, especially as they get a bit older, because after that it's kind of like you find peace with yourself, and I think that's kind of, being a reformer has a lot to do with that. They're definitely liberals, because obviously a lot of people still have stigmas attached to people with mental health problems, and I would to assume the right wingers tend to have more harsh opinions about mental health, especially as the Conservatives are the ones who have cut mental health funding, whereas Labour is trying to kind of re-establish that. So yeah, Liberals. B to E demographic. Definitely part of LGBT. This is due to the fact that a lot of people that have experienced a mental health problem, although a lot of them are straight and don't identify as gay or bisexual or trans, a lot of people that have a mental health problem do, and a lot of people that I know that have had a mental health problem have been part of the LGBT community, and some of my contributors are as well, so I wanted to put that in. Artistic, so they're into photography, painting, fashion or film, whatever their medium is really, just more creative, I say. And a similar audience to Vice and E4. And then I've got kind of the rough estimate of young adults, 16 to 30, so that's kind of the extended side. So my secondary target audience is Generation X. They're likely parental figures at this point or becoming parents. And I feel that they might be inspired by the documentary to kind of be more vigilant in regards to their children's mental well-being. I also looked at Barb statistics for documentary viewing. As you can see, documentaries are still the third most popular. It was the same last year, which is great. But I'm going to further research this, and I'm going to look at more secondary survey results for the genre of documentary, and that will be in my research document. So, primary research, I've created several surveys via SurveyMonkey. I've also pitched my initial idea to Exposure. I did this via a big focus group, so I went to their office in Muswell Hill and I spent about half an hour pitching my idea and just basically doing a focus group with them, finding out what they think I should change or what I need to worry about, what I should focus on, etc. I've also held focus groups with peers and classmates just to get a better view of what my target audience would want to see in my film. So my initial findings, so after creating the qualitative survey on SurveyMonkey, some of the initial replies I received were that barely anyone had seen / read / heard much about psych wards within mainstream media, which is obviously a bit worrying. No one had a positive opinion about psych wards, which is definitely worrying, as obviously they must be doing something wrong. And no one said that there was no stigma surrounding ex-psych ward patients. Everyone that answered the survey either felt that there was some form of stigma placed on ex-patients, which is also worrying, but on the other hand, it also gives me good reason to make this film. Similar production, so my Mad Fat Diary was basically a really good show. There was 2 seasons of it, or 2 series, sorry, and it was on Channel 4. It was really popular at the time because it was quite out there, it was quite sexually explicit, and the main protagonist, Ray, she was quite crude, which was weird for a girl, and she was different. But what mainly like drew a lot of viewers in was the fact that Ray, the main character here, had just come out of a psych ward, and she's kind of like attempting to reintegrate with society, which is obviously really hard, especially as this is based kind of in the 80s/90s. So yeah, it was a really popular show, and although it is a drama, it is based on a real novel that I've read, which is by the woman Rael. So although this is a fictional show, the concept is non-fictional, which I do speak about in my research, and also it did raise a lot of awareness about mental health and psychiatric wards, and it took it from a different angle that no one had kind of explored before, which is why it's a similar product. Girl Interrupted is probably one of the most notorious films surrounding psych wards. Although it is based on American psych wards, it kind of reinforces the idea that it romanticizes the idea of psychiatric wards, and kind of the idea of being a bit beautiful but a bit insane, which is obviously not the case. But Winona Ryder and Angelina Jolie are the main characters, so obviously psych wards are going to be romanticised in this. But in my research, I actually use this to talk about kind of stereotypes of psych wards that have actually stuck to this day, which is quite mental considering this film was made in 1999 and we're in 2017 now, so a bit strange. But yeah, I basically did some research into this as it was a really popular film. It's considered a cult film by many, and it is based in a psych ward, so it was a big part of my research. And then the final similar production is Don't Call Me Crazy, which was also made in 2013 by BBC Three. This is the most like kind of minded film to what I want my product to be. It is about a psych ward, but you actually get to go into the psych ward, you get access to it, and you get to meet the young people in the ward, which is quite a big achievement for a media company to be able to do that, because getting access to a psychiatric ward is incredibly difficult, and being able to film the patients is even harder. So I really like that they managed to pull that off, and it was a really popular documentary. There was quite a few episodes of it, and it was just really eye-opening. I actually watched it when I came out of the psychiatric ward, because it was viewing the same time I was in there. And one of my contributors, Yazzie, actually speaks about it in her interview. So yeah, it influenced a lot of people that were going into psych wards, or who had been in psych wards, or even people that just didn't know anything about them. So it was a really, really insightful documentary. So my secondary research, as you can see, I've done a little spidergram just talking about how I'm going to do this. So books, tutorial guides, art exhibitions, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, films, so Girl Interrupted again, similar products, Don't Call Me Crazy, Facebook forums. I'm part of a lot of mental health groups on Facebook, so I'm going to be using them for my research and feedback. Surveys from other sources, so Barb, Raja, case studies, YouTube vlogs, and yeah, so continuing on from that, I visited an exhibition called Bedlam at the Wellcome Collection in Euston. This is where I was able to learn about psychiatric wards throughout the centuries. On top of this, I also participated in a zine making workshop at the same venue. As I mentioned above, I planned to create a zine to go with the documentary. But yeah, the exhibition was really insightful. I really took a lot of inspiration from it, because I actually, if you look at the picture below, I took a lot of inspiration for the colour scheme of my film from the colour scheme of the exhibition. I really like the clinical blues and whites. I think aesthetically it really represents what being in a psych ward is like. Maybe if they had some yellow as well. So, visual research. I've just kind of thrown in a few sketchbook pictures here. This is just the beginning of my sketchbook. And yeah, as I've said here, there's some examples from my sketchbook. As the project continues, I'll start to add more themes and concepts, possibly such as like cinematography I like and inspiration from similar products. I'll also just probably have some weird doodles and etc. in there. So modes of address. So I've decided to use the observational aspects of the reflexive mode in order to capture personal opinions, emotions, and memories of the contributors without interruption. If I'm honest, like my personal style of filmmaking is I don't like to be in the film. I like to make it about my contributors. I don't want to be there. I don't think I need to be there to tell their story. And I just hate it, if I'm honest. I like it with other films, such as stuff by like Nick Brumfield, because he's really interesting and it's his film, you know. Whereas I like to be distant from my films and simply just piece together a story, which is kind of what makes it the reflexive mode. There might also be expository features because I might use a voiceover. This is just to illustrate situations and give a backstory within the film. There will be a direct mode of address as well, as contributors will be talking/looking directly at the camera. So kind of like a vlog style in a way, but I think sometimes that works quite nicely, especially because they're talking about quite intimate subjects. So one of the main concepts of my film was to definitely film them in their personal space, so their bedrooms, because I really wanted to like show my audience what, like where they live and like that, to show that they're just normal people, to normalise the subject of mental health and psych wards. And I thought the best way to do this would be to put them in their bedrooms because that's their home, you know. So visual aesthetic, so cutaways adds to the realism within the documentary. And as I've just mentioned, there will be interviews taking place in the film, but there'll be no on-screen communication between me and my contributors. And I've explained why. So contributors, so this is Yazzie, this is Akiva, this is Lucy, this is Megan, and this is Sophia. I actually haven't, I have put Lucy's name there, that's good. So these are my contributors, they're lovely. The only two I haven't met before are these two, but I've spoken to them now and met them now obviously, and they're lovely. So as this documentary is based more on reflections of personal experiences, my main contributors are young adults who have spent a number of months in psychiatric wards all around the country. And yeah, as I've just said, these are the contributors I have so far. So I am using Facebook and Messenger to keep in touch with them. And as well as this, I've created a group chat with all contributors. And this is just to arrange a meeting with them within the next 2 weeks, as although I have met them and I have done interviews with them, some of them already, I just want to make sure that I meet them all beforehand, and just kind of get them all together and stuff as well. So equipment, I'm going to be using the directional microphone for the interviews, and I will bring a light with me, as obviously because I'm filming in everyone's bedrooms, the lighting's going to be different at every shoot, so I want to try and level this out if I can. And I wanted to actually use the external recorder in meetings with contributors, and just to evidence these meetings as well. So my budget, They're basically sharing their stories for the greater good, so I won't be paying them for this. Obviously, if they wanted me to pay them, I would, because I don't mind. Might have to pay for the supplies to create my zine, and if I want it done professionally, I will have to pay printing costs. So I've got a £30 limit for that. I was considering to use a higher space in order to present my film. I have given myself a £50 limit for this. Travel food costs I have a £20 limit for, and I might have to pay for the rights to any background music I use during post-production, although this is really cheap, approximately £1 to £5. And as I've just written here, a full detailed budget, document and research document into my budget will be created during the pre-production stage. Locations, so we've got Enfield, Free and Barnet, Golders Green and Edgware. These are not all confirmed, but Edgware and Enfield are definitely confirmed areas. So this is the most basic form of my schedule. What I've done here is I've just literally penciled in or typed in more so everything that I plan to do during these weeks. This is just the most basic form, and as time goes on, I'm gonna actually write in the boxes what I did that day. So as the project goes on, it will be nice and full and informative. So my rackies, so this is Megan's room. No, that's Megan's room. That's Yazzy's room. This is Lauren's room. And this is Akiba's room. Lauren isn't confirmed though. Feedback. So the way I'll be receiving feedback will be through various social media platforms, with YouTube being my main outsource. SurveyMonkey will also be where I seek out detailed feedback via surveys. I'm going to also contact professionals, so Exposure being one. This is in order to receive a really high standard of feedback. So yeah, this is the pitch for my idea. Thanks for listening.